Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Welcome to this episode of Rise to Lead with yet another fantastic guest, an incredibly dynamic host of his own podcast, Chasing the Insights. And I had the enormous pleasure to be on that podcast not too long ago. With me today is powerhouse Vince Warnock. Welcome to the show.
Oh my goodness, it's so good being here. Yeah, it's so good being here and getting to return the favor. Honestly, you're one of my favorite guests I had on my show. We had such a blast that any chance for you and I to catch up, we're just going to hit record and then make some magic.
Oh, wow. Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. I had a blast too. And we were talking about a self-empowering mindset. I remember it wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, so I'm so very blessed to have you on today here on my Rise to Lead podcast. Let me introduce you to our audience before we dive into what I believe will be an exciting and insight-rich conversation about neuromarketing and how to connect deeply with your audience. Now, choosing a topic was tough because Vince is a leader and an expert in many, many areas, including AI and many mindset-related topics as well. And I chose this topic because not too many people talk about it, or at least I haven't heard many people talk about it. And it's really, really relevant to anyone, whether you're a business owner or whether you're employed, I believe. So you need to connect with your audience in any case, right, Vince?
That's exactly it. Spot on.
Yeah. And that's why we're here to talk about this. Vince Warnock is a 10 times best-selling author. Wow. He's a publisher and award-winning marketing and visibility coach. He's known for his expertise in neuromarketing, publishing, and AI, and has been presented with numerous awards. For example, he was included in the Fearless 50, a program designed by Adobe to recognize the world's top 50 marketers. Ooh, that's crazy.
I still can't even believe that one. Every time I even hear that, Regina, it's like, oh man, they must be talking about somebody else, not me, surely.
Oh, they are definitely talking about you. Vince is also the host of the top 1.5% podcast, Chasing the Insights. And that's top 1.5% globally.
Yeah.
And the founder of ATG Publishing and the Sisterhood of AI. Love that. Vince, this is already very, very impressive, of course. And now we know that you've won all these awards and prizes and you're top ranked with your podcast. What else can you share about yourself that we don't know already and that we should know? And how did you get to where you are today?
Okay. Well, first of all, everyone should know by now I'm a giant Star Wars and Marvel fan. I'm a giant nerd. Basically, I'm a 7-year-old kid in an adult's body. That's pretty much how I operate day to day. I have some pretty severe ADHD and have to deal with that on a daily basis, unmedicated as well, which means that it poses other challenges, but also believe that you can totally lean into ADHD and lean into the creativity, which is fun. But also something most people don't know about me is despite where I am now, I didn't come from this. I didn't come from a stable family. I didn't come from a good environment. I came from a very abusive environment, came from poverty, and was people believing in me. It was people that spoke into my life when I was 11. It was a teacher in particular that really had a profound impact on me and drove me to do pretty much everything I'm doing today. Like they inspired me to the point where I realized I don't need to be defined by my past. I don't need to be defined by my upbringing or by, my parents or my family or anything like that. I could write my own path on this. And that inspired me to do so, but it also inspired me to want that for other people. And that feeling I had on the inside when that teacher was speaking to me, telling me that I could do something great with my life, that weird feeling on the inside of going, hey, what is this? Oh, wow, someone believes in me. Oh, it's such a freaky feeling. That's what I want for other people as well. And it's inspired me to basically create, most of my ventures are all around one thing, which is giving a voice to people, whether that's giving a voice on my podcast, giving a voice through publishing and through their through books, whether it's through a magazine, which we're launching, or whether it's actually through the work we do in AI, where we help people to elevate their business so their voice can be heard. But all of that is around helping people with the opportunity that I was granted. So yeah, I'm very, very blessed.
Wow, you're doing so many amazing things. And I can see that you are a master in mindset because you have gone through a lot of challenges apparently yourself and truly figured out
I can
that.
tell you, it definitely does not feel like master of mindset though. When you have those days where you got low dopamine and you're sitting on the couch going, I can't do this, I can't face this. Definitely don't feel like master of mindset there. But no, look, you have to learn. You have to learn how to deal with yourself, to deal with your traumas, your scars, and all these kind of things. Otherwise, it will hold you back. And I've had to learn to push through that. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I also think, that actually makes us a master in it
Yeah.
because we have the tools now, we are using the tools, and that's what it's all about. It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about making it perfect for us, so to
I
speak.
like that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I have very strong views on the word perfect as well.
Exactly.
Like honestly, because there's so many of us that do strive for perfection, or we say we're a perfectionist. But the reality is we shouldn't aim for that. We should definitely
Mhm.
not aim for perfection. And the reason is that is a final state. That is a completed state. When
Mhm.
something is perfect, there is no room for improvement at all.
Yeah.
And we will never achieve that because our interpretation of perfection, like whatever we perceive as perfection, whether it's a competitor of yours, whether it's another company that you look up to and go, I want to be that. If I had that, that would be perfect. The reality is that is your perception of that. And when you achieve that, your perception will change and the information that you get changes and you realize, oh, wow, this isn't everything it's cracked up to be. So I had that, Regina, in a previous job. I was the chief marketing officer at Cigna Insurance. And on paper, it was the dream job. Literally, I was sitting there going, man, I'm paid ridiculous amount of money, get to travel the world, I'm winning awards, I published my first book. All of these things on paper were amazing. And most marketers would kill to have that kind of job. And I was miserable. I didn't want that at all. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. I felt so guilty that I had this job that everyone wanted and I didn't want it at all. And it was because my perception of perfection was inaccurate. My perception of success was inaccurate. So
I love this. I love this because I totally agree with you, first of all, but also
yeah,
it
yeah.
is,
I knew
it
you
is
would. Yeah,
always a
yeah,
really cool conversation to have. I just recently
yeah.
actually published an article on the wabi sabi principle as well, because we never talk about it enough. People still are often proud to be perfectionists, and
Yeah.
other people suffer from being perfectionists and they know it, and we really need to move through this need to be perfect, especially also to the outside world, which we see a lot of.
I think we need to reframe it as well and call it what it is, because something that really helped me was I went to when I was speaking at a conference in San Francisco. There was a speaker there who was a researcher working on imposter syndrome, and one of the things they talked about is how do we sabotage ourselves? And they said one of the ways we sabotage ourselves is perfectionism. And I was like, that's an interesting quote. And then they turned around and said, which you realize perfectionism is just another word for procrastination. And it's another word for if I don't release this until it's perfect, or if I don't do this until it's perfect, then basically all I'm doing is trying to prolong how long it is before I put it out there. Because if I put it out there, I'll be judged and people will see through me. They'll know I'm a fraud. They'll know I'm a fake. And so it was just another way for us to self-sabotage.
Absolutely, absolutely. We need the practice to become better
Yes,
at
I love this.
anything.
Yeah, yeah,
We need to start
yeah.
somewhere, putting
Yeah.
ourselves out somewhere. Write the first book, publish it, maybe, or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
Yes.
See, podcast or no podcast, I just love talking to you, Jenna. Every time we do, it's like, oh my goodness, this is inspiring.
Yeah, I love talking to you too. So hopefully this is not going to go on for an entire day.
Good luck.
No, not
Yeah.
hopefully for me, hopefully for our listeners, because they
Yeah,
will
yeah,
probably not have that much time.
yeah.
And yes, no, you know, we could, as I said before, we could have chosen 1,000 topics for
Yeah.
this podcast, right? It's always great. So, how do you typically work with your clients? Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Sure. Well, I have multiple companies because, ADHD. So the publishing companies, we help them write their books. We actually work with a lot of neurodivergent entrepreneurs, particularly those with ADHD or dyslexia,
Mhm.
to help them to write and publish their books and then to market them as well. So really proud of the work we do there. We've actually created the International ADHD Publishing Standard,
Wow.
which actually came from a publisher mocking us about the way that we format our books. They were like, "Oh, you don't follow the standards." And I'm like, what standards? And they were talking about how all paragraphs have to run onto each other. And I'm like, oh, I can't read this kind of book. And it wasn't until we sat down as a team and said, why is it that we format it in this way? And my team literally said, that's because that's what you like, Vince. That's how you read a book. And I went, oh yeah, wait a minute. I know why this is. This is ADHD. So we did more research into it. And then from that insult of that person mocking me, we actually leant into it and create the standard around it. And now the irony is that publishing company has recently adopted our publishing standard as their own. So tempted to send them a
Wow.
message and go, how'd that work out for you?
This is such
Yeah.
a great story.
Oh,
And
it's so much fun, honestly. We love being the kind of rebels in market. So that's
yeah,
the publishing side. On the AI side, we do a lot of work training, particularly women, but a lot of entrepreneurs how to use AI to fast track their business. And most people only ever scratch the surface of AI and they're like, oh, this is okay. It'll help me write an email. I'm like, oh my goodness, there is so much more that this can do for you. You don't have to hire huge teams. You can literally use this to replace most of what you need to be able to scale your business. So that's exciting. And then the marketing stuff. So as well as the magazine, the podcast, all this kind of thing, I do a lot of work coaching people around marketing. And this is based around neuromarketing. So it's actually understanding your target market, understanding how their brain works, how they'll receive your messages, how you can kind of tap into their sense of community and belonging and things and become the brand that's not just a brand that they're considering, but the only brand that they would consider.
wow. Yes. Beautiful. I also want to go back to your amazing story about the formatting really quickly. We can talk about
Oh,
turning
yeah,
adversity into an opportunity, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's the ideal example for that. And by the way, also ADHD, I hear that often from people actually who are immensely creative.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
100%.
you know? And maybe it's because there's so many ideas running through their heads all the time that it's even hard to line them all up because there's so much. And of
Well,
course, then you're jumping around a little bit.
there's so many different aspects of ADHD which feed into it as well. So there's a thing called pattern recognition. So most people with ADHD are terrible to take to the movies or watching TV. But we love it. But the reason we're terrible is because quite often we subconsciously know where the movie's heading or know where the TV show's heading. We can tell who the killer is right from the very first frame of the movie in a lot of cases and things because our brains are trained to recognize patterns.
Okay.
And most people's are, but with ADHD, it seems to be accelerated dramatically. So there's that aspect which actually plays into creativity because when you can see patterns that other people can't, that can feed your creativity and feed your ideas and all this kind of thing. But the other thing that plays into that is they always talk about ADHD thinking outside the square. Well, I would challenge that. I don't think we think outside the square. I think we don't have a square. I think
Right.
that box that everyone has, we long ago gave up on that box because we don't fit in it anyway. And that I think gives us a different approach to how we do things. And then you talked about the brain with many ideas. There's a term that we've been throwing around at the moment, which upsets a lot of people, but it's called the 10 brain syndrome. And it really is what it feels like when you are overstimulated with ADHD. Like when your brain is going 100 miles an hour, it genuinely feels like you have 10 brains inside your head, all operating at the same time, but all focus on something completely different. So you have to kind of corral these brains. But when you can, and when you get in a hyper focus mode, the results of that are phenomenal. The creativity that comes from that is just amazing. So, and when I said I like to lean into ADHD, I mean it. I mean, the downsides are, they're not very nice. Let's get real. But the upsides of ADHD are phenomenal. And I was asked recently if I would like to be cured of ADHD, or, like it to be gone from my life. And the answer is no. It's actually a core part of who I am, and I'm quite comfortable with who I am.
Yes, it reminds me also of sensitivity. So there are some people who are highly sensitive. There's always like the
Yeah,
sunny side and the shadow side of
yeah,
everything, the two sides of the coin. It's a gift and it's
yep.
a curse, so to
Yeah,
speak.
100%. I love that term, the shadow side. Totally going to adopt that now. It's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this is very, very insightful also for people maybe who are listening and who have ADHD. I'm not going to say who suffer from ADHD, because you're learning about all the
Yeah,
advantages today here. So this is really beautiful.
yeah.
And yeah, so our main topic today is neuromarketing and how to connect deeply with our audience. So first of all, for those who don't really have a clear understanding of what neuromarketing is, can you define it a little bit more for us, and what it
Uh,
means, what it includes?
I'll give you the ultimate simplistic way of viewing it. It is basically understanding how the brain responds to your messages or your
Mhm.
marketing. And it's as simple as that. It's if you can understand the way that people think, then you should be able to tap into that. And too often, too many, even marketing agencies, even very reputable marketing agencies, by the way, focus on one aspect of the brain or focus on one element of that without understanding how the parts all kind of work together. And when you understand that, oh, it's so much easier to market. It's incredible.
So how then, thanks for that. That was very, very clear and simple. Simple is always good. So
Yeah.
how then can we connect deeply with our audience through neuromarketing? How does it work in practice?
Yeah.
Can you give us a few examples?
Sure. Well, the best way is to try and understand how people make decisions. And when I say decisions, there are multiple layers to making decisions. Obviously, if you're going, what socks am I going to put on today? You don't really have to think about that too much, or at least I don't anyway. I'll just grab something out and go, that'll do. So I'm not really engaging all of my brain there. But if somebody's looking to purchase a product, a service, or an offering, or anything that you provide, their brain is activating three different areas. And normally we talk about things like the amygdala, we talk about the frontal lobes, there's so many different aspects of the brain, but trying to explain what each of those different things does is next to impossible, because they'll do something in one situation and something completely different in another. And if you look at how emotions are regulated, there's like 3 or 4 different parts of the brain that do that. So what we've done in marketing and things is broken it down into 3 core areas. So those areas are the reptilian brain, the neocortex, and the limbic system. And if you understand how these 3 things play together, it's going to make life so much easier for you. For example, the reptilian brain, think of it as your survival mechanism. That's the ancient part of your brain that reminds you to breathe and eat and walk and keeps you safe and secure and all of this. But it's also a highly alert part of your brain. I think it works out 7 times every second, it's looking for danger. It's looking for things to be alert for. So when you're marketing to someone, or you're selling to someone, or you and I talking to each other, if I said, "Oh, Regina, you have to come and use our company, and we'll help you publish your book," then that part of the brain's going, wait. Are there any red flags here? Is there anything I should be looking for? And this is a very easy part of the brain to deal with. That's not actually a part of the brain that says, I will make a decision, but it certainly is the part of the brain that will opt out of making a decision. It'll go, something's not right here. Something feels inauthentic. I'm going to disconnect from this, and we're not going to make a decision. So the brain kind of shuts down a little bit. So that's the reptilian brain. And we deal with that in marketing in very different ways. We deal with it with things like testimonials, with things like trust badges, like 5-star reviews, all these kind of things. We deal with it with case studies. We also deal with it as entrepreneurs. One of the most powerful ways is to actually show vulnerability. Like, for example, if I do this often when I'm on stage, if I'm speaking in front of a large crowd, I will actually share some of the negative aspects of who I am. I'll share some of the things I've had to battle through and the things I've gone through. And the reason I do this is because A, I think it helps people genuinely, but B, it also shares vulnerability. And when you do that, their brains, the reptilian part of the brain, is going, hey, wait a minute. This person's being very, very vulnerable right now. This must be a safe space. Because if they're sharing this, it must be okay. I'm not needed here. I'm going to go and sit in the corner and have a cup of coffee. I'll leave the rest of the thinking up to the other parts of the brain. So that's the reptilian brain. Very easy to deal with. Very difficult if you are an untrustworthy brand, because that'll be on high alert all the time. But the other two parts of the brain are where most marketers get it wrong. So the neocortex is the logical part of the brain, for want of a different term. Like, it's basically where most of the rational kind of decisions are made. And for most of us and for most marketers, they think that's where the decision is made. So therefore, that is where we need to target. So for example, when you're putting together a product page for an offering or a service or a product, you will have things like, here are the features, here are the benefits, here's why you need, here's all the logical reasons why this makes sense for you to buy. Like, it's the cheapest, or it's got the most amount of value adds. It's got, but wait, there's more. All of these things are logically feeding the logical part of the brain. But what they miss is that we don't generally make, particularly for high ticket items, we don't make the decision in the neocortex. We make the decision in the emotional part of the brain, which is the limbic system, and we justify it with the neocortex. So all of those things are important, particularly the outcomes, like the benefits of whatever it is you're selling. But they are not the selling point. They are the justification. They're the thing that'll get you over the line, essentially. The limbic system is where most people miss it. And when we think of the emotional part of the brain, most people think, oh, that's about creating a really soppy kind of ad, or something that really touches the heartstrings and all these kind of things. No, it's about connecting with who they are as a person. I've got some great examples of this. So, man, I'm so passionate about this, Regina. I'm going to go off on many tangents if I'm not careful. Yeah. But the limbic system works very much along the lines of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So for those that understand what Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is basically a pyramid where these are the kind of things that we need as human beings. The base layer, the biggest layer, is really simple. That is safety and security. That is, we need shelter, we need food, we need water, we need security, all those kind of things. That makes sense. And as a product, you can tap into that. But generally, what we want to achieve is the next two layers, because the layer above that is the sense of community. Every single one of us have built into us the sense of wanting to belong, wanting to be a part of something. And then above that is another layer called esteem, because we don't just want to belong, we want to be elevated within that tribe or that community. We don't want to be just belonging there, because as we know, the weakest person, in ancient times, the weakest person in a tribe was often ostracized, often left out, and that meant death, essentially, because you were separated from everybody else. So how do we tap into that? Well, a good example of this is whiskey. So I'm a huge whiskey fan, like massive whiskey fan. Anyone want any free advice from me? It's really simple. Buy me whiskey. I will sit down. I will give you hours worth of time easily. Especially if it's a really good whiskey, you'll get even more of my time. But I remember, Regina, seeing online, there was a Kickstarter that launched, and it was for, in fact, they're not on this, they're in the office at the other end, otherwise I'd show you. But there were these hip flasks, right? These special hip flasks designed just for whiskey. So these are very special ones. They're actually made of a very thick glass rather than metal. And the reason for that is it doesn't taint the taste of the whiskey, because even stainless can actually taint the taste of the whiskey. But the other thing is, because it's very thick glass, it can actually be sterilized very, very quickly. So you can go from putting a 28-year-old Glendronach in there, sterilize it, and then put in a 25-year-old Macallan, so switch between the different types of taste that you like. So that's pretty impressive. Then they also have like a rubber membrane, or you can get a leather one as well, that goes around it with a little wee slot so you can see how much whiskey is in there, which, by the way, I don't know why every hip flask doesn't have that. I mean, come on, that was this obvious kind of, feature. So it's got this little level there so you can see how much whiskey's in there. And then they have a special top that has like a replaceable cork inlay. So for every different type of whiskey you use, you can put a different cork in there, and that helps with the aroma and helps to, so all of these things are really, really important. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to buy these. So I bought a 2-pack. I bought a large hip flask, and I bought a little one as well. And I had to wait like 9 months or something for this. Like, it was ridiculous. But they kept communicating with us, so I was okay with it. And then it arrived, and I was like, this is amazing. And then it kicked in. I suddenly realized, why the hell did I buy these? I've never used a hip flask in my life, and I have no intention of ever using a hip flask in my life. I didn't buy them because these were practical. All of those different features that I talked about of this flask actually didn't mean anything to me. What they did mean is that when I tell people about this hip flask, when I tell them about all these different aspects that I just relayed to all of you, it says something about me. It says, hey, Vince knows what he's doing. Because most of you would have thought, I didn't even realize that was a thing. I didn't even realize that glass was better than stainless for this. Or, so for most people, they would go, oh, wow, Vince must know what he's talking about. And when it's Vince must know what he's talking about whiskey, I'm very passionate about whiskey. So I have a sense of belonging to basically whiskey fans. I'm someone who knows something about whiskey. I belong in that tribe. So that's really important, that sense of belonging. And when I'm telling you about all these things that are cutting edge that you've never heard before, that also esteems me within there, because it's like Vince just doesn't, he's not just a whiskey fan. This guy knows what he's talking about. So I bought those because of what they said about me, not because of what they were. So this is how we kind of tap into the limbic system. And there's so many different examples of that. But if you can tap into their sense of belonging and who they are, then that's going to go a long way. In fact, I will tell you this, it's one of the biggest mistakes people make. I still remember a guy coming to me who was running a parenting workshops for men, like for fathers. And his whole premise was, he goes, hey, we suck at raising kids. Like, as a dad, you're failing as being a dad. So come to me and I'll help you to not fail. Nobody signed up for his program, which I'm not surprised. And most of you wouldn't be surprised either. Because when you hear that, you're like, oh, that's like, I wouldn't want to sign up for that. Because when I do, it says something about me. It says I suck as a dad. And I don't want to suck as a dad, even though most dads feel like they're failing most of the time. Most of us feel like we have no idea what we're doing. We're making it up as we go along, and we're scared. We're genuinely scared. I always was scared with our kids. But the fact is, I don't want to admit that. And I certainly wouldn't want to be part of something that says that about me. So we turned that around. It was very simple. We just changed the messaging around being a super dad. We changed the messaging around being, hey, you're doing your best. You know, you're a good dad. You're a good father. But here's how you can have an even greater impact on your kids. Here's how you can create a legacy with your children. Next thing you know, he had people signing up everywhere, sold out the entire program. So it's all about what it says about you.
Absolutely. You know, you also see this on, especially also on LinkedIn, on posts. People do not want to comment on things that point out their challenges, right? And especially people with jobs, you know. I mean, why would they admit that they are not good at something? And there's always this underlying, maybe even subconscious fear of losing your job or just not being seen as an expert. You said, you know, you positioned yourself as a whiskey expert. and
when in reality, Regina, I'm just an expert at drinking it. I really don't know that much about whiskey. I just know that I really enjoy it. So
yeah. No, that's good. Okay. Yeah, I you know, when I went through this, reminds me of a quote that I coined once. When I went through this experience with a business partner in Brazil, which was extremely painful, I said, sometimes I said, when I was talking about this, when life gives you lemons, make a whiskey sour.
I love that quote. I love that quote. Yeah.
I thought you would love it.
Yes. Oh, awesome. It's interesting you kind of said that too about the on LinkedIn. So I saw this recently. I just emceed a networking event. We had a few speakers locally here in Mildura, and one of the speakers there, good speaker, very good speaker, but very different kind of way of speaking that I would have. And one of the things they wanted to do is drive engagement in the audience. Now, this person didn't really understand the limbic system. They didn't really understand people's sense of belonging or not belonging, or the kind of the emotional aspect of how the brain works. So what they would do, Regina, is they go like this. They go, okay, so if we were to improve that, what would be the result? Anyone? 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 And they're pointing around the room, and someone would give an answer, like nervously give an answer. And he goes, that's okay, but no, not what I'm looking for. Anyone? Anyone? Anyone?
Oh.
And he was half expecting everyone to put up their hand and give these answers. But what he failed to realize is, you're in a room full of people that you don't know. The last thing you want to do is put up your hand and get it wrong. Nobody likes being a fool, except if you're a professional fool like I am. You know, like I make jokes of myself all the time. But for most people, they wouldn't put up their hand and respond to him, which is what he wanted. He wanted them to be engaged. If anything, they sat there really nervous. And the worst part about that is they then weren't paying attention to what he was saying, because they were more paying attention to what should I say in a response to this if he points me out and I have to answer. So you've got to think about how their brain's perceiving what it says about them, essentially.
Yes, that is so true. And in interactive sessions, like training sessions, the way around that sometimes also is to do group work. Because if you now speak for the group, it's a bit easier to share. Now you've come, you know, you've worked on something together, right? So it's not your sole responsibility what you're going to share.
Well,
So this is
the
sort of,
other
yeah.
Yeah, the other way of doing is a technique that I've been using for a little while
Yes,
now
please.
is I give them permission to have an answer.
Yeah.
So in other words, if I'm saying something like, how many times have you sat on the couch doom scrolling instead of doing work? Like, no one's going to admit that because they're admitting failing. But what I will do instead is say, oh, how many of you have been like me, where I'm sitting on the couch doom scrolling, knowing that I've got to be doing some work, but I really can't press through. By putting my own hand up, by saying like me, then
Yeah.
you give them permission to go, oh, all right, he's being honest. I'll
Yeah.
be honest as well. Or if you go, like I did this at a conference one time, I broke my own rules and I was talking about being fearless. So I got up there and I said to people, look, what does being fearless mean? And I said, look, there are no wrong answers here, everyone. So that way they kind of had permission to kind of try and guess and things. Now I'm asking for feedback from people. This could have backfired on me big time. But instead I have people put up their hand and they go, oh, absence of fear. And I said, great answer. Not quite what I'm looking for. That is a great answer. Anyone else? And they said, oh, yeah. It means, what does they say? Oh, that you've banished all fear, or somebody else says that there's no fear in you and all this. And I said, all of these are great answers. And then I turned around and said, all of you are wrong, but in the best way possible. Because what you don't realize is fearless doesn't mean absence of fear. It means not being beholden to fear. The fear is still there. And so I gave them permission to be wrong, and it made them feel good even in amongst that. But none of them felt bad about that. You see them all kind of grinning away and go, oh, yeah. So rather than cause them tension and stress.
Right, because there are many possible answers anyway. In school, we learn that there's only one right answer, and it's not really like that. It also depends a little bit on how we define certain terms, how we use them, how we, on our perspective and what we interpret into a word sometimes as well, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
so I'm curious. So you talked about one specific case study of a client of yours already. Would you like to mention another one maybe that gives us a
Sure. I mean, like a lot of neuromarketing goes all the way back to someone called David Ogilvy. So old school, like pioneer in marketing and pioneer in neuromarketing. But a lot of what we talk about can go down to even product level, like toothpaste, for example. If you said to people, like if you kind of understand why people make the decisions they make. So if you said to people, why is it that you brush your teeth twice a day? First of all, you hope they brush their teeth twice a day. But if you say, why do you brush your teeth twice a day? Most people will say things like, because I don't want plaque, or I don't want cavities, or I don't want to have to pay the doctor's bill. That's usually a good motivator. I don't want to have to pay the doctor's bill, or, I'm making sure that my teeth are healthy and everything. The problem with that is that's not how our brains work. Our brains work. Most people's brains don't actually make decisions now. Most people's, that is, don't make decisions now for something that's in the future. We don't generally go, I'm going to make this action now because I don't want this result in the future. Instead, we're actually responding to something more primal and more immediate. And this goes back to how we advertise toothpaste. Because if you look at how we advertise toothpaste, yes, we talk about plaque, we talk about all these things, but what do we show? We show people that are very close together with their mouths open. We show their breath. Basically, we show that people are close. And if we get very real, the thought of bad breath makes us feel like we're going to be ostracized, or we're going to be rejected, or we're going to be. So actually, we're playing subtly there. And this is a very manipulative way of using neuromarketing. We're subtly basically working on people's fear of rejection. So when we talk about that sense of belonging, this kind of marketing, this kind of advertising is the negative type of that, where it's saying, hey, unless you buy our product, you won't belong. Like you will be rejected. That beautiful woman or beautiful man that's standing next to you, that's really, really close while you talk to them, they're going to certainly turn away because you've got bad breath. So even though we tell people, or people tell us that they brush their teeth because of plaque and cavities and dental bills and all these kind of things, the reality is they want to belong and they don't want to be rejected. So it can go right down to that kind of core.
Here we go again. We want to belong. Exactly.
Always want to belong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
We actually saw this with, I helped a client of ours a long time ago, actually, or a few years back, to pivot their entire business because COVID kind of happened, obviously, and they were a chef that teaches people how to cook. And they did a lot of work with children, like teaching children how to cook. And of course, when COVID came on, they would do online classes. And that was awesome. And they very clearly saw the writing on the wall because COVID was starting to finish. This in Canada. COVID's starting to finish. And it was like, well, all of a sudden, parents aren't locked at home with their kids and throw them on Zoom and go, there you go make a mess in the kitchen while I go and have a wine back here. Now they're going to want their kids to go outside. They want their kids to be around other people. So they knew that this is a potential risk for their business. So they wanted to pivot, and they thought, well, let's try adult cooking classes. So we're like, okay, so why would an adult do this? And the immediate thought was, well, they want to learn a new skill. Wrong. Most adults can just jump on YouTube and learn how to do something. Why would they go to you? Oh, because I'm a very good chef. That's true. But there are also very good chefs on YouTube or cooking books or all sorts of things that can help them do this. Why do they really want to jump on a call with you? Why do they want to jump on a Zoom? And what we realized is it was about the sense of community. In fact, what we did is she did a free adult cooking class, got a bunch of people together. And we noticed two things. Number one, that interaction between all of them was the most important part. That's what they love. They love that sense of community there. But number two, we also noticed that 90% of the people in that room, in that Zoom call, were all entrepreneurs. So we managed to pivot her business to go, let's tap into their sense of belonging. So as entrepreneurs, we're proud of the fact we're entrepreneurs. We should be. All entrepreneurs should be proud because you're doing an amazing thing. So what we did is instead of doing a cooking class, what we did is we set up a networking event where we brought in 3 experts. So her first one, it brought in myself and 2 others talking about experiential marketing, like creating events and things like that. And then all these marketers signed up. They all paid their money. They came in. They learned how to make a chocolate orange souffle, which, by the way, so delicious, right? But also something that we perceive as being very hard to make. So her whole thing is, I'm going to teach you all how to make a chocolate orange souffle. And then once we've made that, or while we're waiting for it to cook, these experts are going to teach you about experiential marketing. So all of a sudden, as entrepreneurs, they go, hey, I can justify being in here with the neocortex because I'm learning and it's going to add value to my business. But secretly, I'm part of something that's really intimate. I'm part of something where I belong. And it was an amazing event because not only could we teach them about this, but also while we're all sitting there eating, my session was while we're eating the actual souffles, people got to ask me questions. And they had this kind of thing which they wouldn't normally get in a webinar, certainly wouldn't get in a conference. So all of a sudden, we tapped into their sense of belonging to this little unique niche community. And within that, they accomplished something. They made a chocolate orange souffle, which they could then tell to other people. And everyone was impressed, especially those that got to taste their souffles. So again, they're now esteemed within there as well.
Wow, this is an awesome idea. I have a friend who does cooking classes, healthy cooking classes for kids as well. And yes, she will love to hear about this too. I definitely also want to interview her because she's an amazing leader in that arena. And I think people will benefit from hearing from her as well. Okay, that's
the beauty of this, Regina, is this takes you from being an amazing leader, because there are so many, and this is the thing I love, and this is why I do what I do. There are so many talented entrepreneurs out there. There are people that are genuinely thinking different or trying new things or trying to, think outside the box or throw away the box if you've got ADHD. They're trying all these new things, but they still get lost in amongst this sea of other entrepreneurs, sea of competitors, sea of other alternative options. So what you want to do, and this is where the beauty of neuromarketing comes in, is you step above all of that. All of a sudden, you don't have someone that goes, oh, I might purchase from them, I might not. You've got someone that goes, I want to belong to this. So that's the only option for me. I'm desperately going to do. And we talk about this. One of my peers, who I won't name on here because every time him and I get in an argument, but he's one of the top marketers in the world. But him and I, whenever we spoke at conferences, we always clashed in a good way. It was a bit of friendly banter. But his whole thing is, hey, I want you to charge as much as possible up front. And then I want you to take them up the value ladder. Like, what else can I add on? What else can I add on? What else can I charge them? Charge them, charge them, charge them. And I said, the problem with this is his is just pure marketing. So the problem you've got is I give away most of my stuff for free. I do free calls with people, even though my mentors and my coaches all tell me off. I don't care. I know this works. I do free sessions with people. I give away copies of my books. I do all sorts of things there. And I help as many people as possible. I don't charge them up front, but they come to me in the end and they'll usually purchase from me. And the reason I do that is, for this other guy, he's selling something to people. So it's a transaction. So when they go in and they purchase from him, if he comes up with a new product, he's got to go out and market to them again. He's got to go out and say, hey, this is why I think this product is now really good for you. And if they've had a previous good experience, then they may or may not purchase it. If they've had a bad experience, they won't purchase from it. But the difference with that is with me, by giving away so much and by doing so much and adding value to people so much and making them feel like they belong and they're esteemed, I have a raving fan base that it doesn't matter what I put out there, they will buy it. And I've had people buying books on AI that are never going to use AI. And I'm like, come on. Or they sign up for my program and I'm like, you're not even an entrepreneur. And they go, I don't care. I want to be a part of this. You're like, this is for people that own their own business, please. And they go, oh, okay. So you end up with this fan base essentially that will buy from you because of what it says about them and because of what you've contributed to them, rather than, I think this is a good fit product.
Absolutely. And there are different approaches, and you have chosen yours, and that works best for you. And, different people resonate maybe with different approaches.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, again, it's about the brain and how we respond or react to the different,
100%. I know for a fact, Regina, there are people out there that will never buy from me. Because I'm too, I don't know, too empathetic or too, I got told I'm too feminine by someone. I went, you do realize that's not an insult to me. They went, oh. So, but for a lot of them, they're like, oh, if you're giving away stuff for free, then that's obviously not of value. I go, no, I'm all about adding value. So there are people that will never align with who I am. They just don't like that kind of personality. But then they will align with, that competitor that I was talking about. They'll align with someone who's very type A, very driven, it's all about, they'll swear every second word and all this kind of thing. So you've got to find your audience.
Right. And your generosity also took you to the 1.5% globally rated podcast host. It definitely has done something.
That person that I always argue with, there was a very funny moment there where he said something and he regretted it the moment he said it. Because we were talking about this and he goes, oh, Vince, how many times have I told you stop? Because I was running a conference at the time and I made it a free conference. He goes, no, don't give it away for free. How many times have I told you? And I said, look, dude, we're never going to agree on this. Don't even bother trying to sell me on the concept. I'm giving it away free. I've got upsells in there and all this kind of stuff. I know I make money off this. In fact, I make very good money off this. And he goes, yeah, but that's why you're never going to be successful. And then the moment he said it, you could tell he regretted it. And I turned around and I went, oh, well, that's a very good point. I never thought of it that way. And he's going, and he knew what was coming. I just said, yeah, because, obviously you've been so successful. You're one of the top 50 marketers in the world. And they went, oh, no, wait. That was me. Oh, this is awkward. And he goes, exactly. The only time I've ever managed to pull that one out without some kind of irony there, I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I also love what you said before about throwing the box out. I say that all the time too. Don't think outside the box, throw the entire box out, right? Or at least step outside the box and look at the box from outside so that you actually know that it's a limitation. There's many different ways of doing that or thinking about it. Yeah, so this has been amazing. I have so enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Of course, I'll post all the links you shared with me in the description, Vince, but I'd still love for you to share where people can find you and your top 1.5% globally rated podcast, Chasing the Insights. And because I really, really want our listeners to check that out. So
I make it so difficult for people. No, I'm joking. I make it really easy. Everything's at chasingtheinsights.com. You will see links on there to my social media profiles. Do reach out to me, unless you're a spammer. I don't like spammers. But if you're somebody who legitimately wants to elevate your voice, who legitimately wants to step into that thought leadership, who legitimately wants their voice heard, then reach out to me. I'll do a free session with you. We can have a chat. If you're thinking about publishing a book, then funny enough, grab a free session with me. I'll give you a rundown of the publishing industry, give you a rundown of what to expect and how to write a book, etc. But it's also the home of my podcast, it's the home of my books, and it's the home of, very soon, our magazine, which we're launching as well. So love to connect with you all. I genuinely do believe this, Regina, that everyone deserves to be heard. And even people, and this is controversial, but even people we disagree with, even people that have contrary views to us, even people that have terrible views, they still deserve a voice. And the main reason they deserve a voice is because often when they have a voice, people can respond to that. And if they are saying things that are bigoted or something hurtful or hateful and things, then people have an opportunity to educate them. So I'm a firm believer of that. But for all of you, hopefully you're not one of those people. You do deserve to be seen, and you do deserve to have your voice heard. And there are people out there, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, there are people out there that are waiting for you to show up and waiting for your story and waiting to hear what you've been through, because that will resonate with them, because they've been through the same. And you may just be the hope that they have to actually break through their own situation as well. So yeah, firmly believe that in every single one of you. So please grab a hold of that.
I love that. And it's a beautiful way to close our conversation today. So yes, this has, of course, been amazing. As I said at the beginning, always love talking to you, and I'm sure we're going to have more of those at some point. Thank you again. Thank you for sharing all the rich insights.
Oh, thank you for having me. Honestly, for me, it was just a chance for you and I to catch up again. I so loved our conversation last time. I was like, man, we're going to keep this going. So we might just have to be regular guests on each other's shows just so we get to catch up.
That would be awesome. That would be so awesome. We'll do that for sure. Okay, everyone else listening, thanks for listening, and make it all an amazing day, a freaking amazing day.
Wonderful.
Thank you for tuning in to Rise to Lead. Keep shining your light, standing up for what's right, and inspiring others to step into their brilliance. If you liked this episode, please give it a 5-star rating and subscribe to the Rise to Lead podcast on your preferred podcast app. Until next time, it's Regina Huber, and in the meantime, remember to rise to lead.